I didn't pay my accountant, so he ratted me out to the IRS for $4 million, and they paid him a huge reward. My buddy is an accountant and he has his own firm. His biggest clients are small to medium-sized businesses. Well, he had a client who owned 4 different clubs or bars in 2 different cities. The client was always shady and always slow on payment. I was also a customer of one of the bars and they had a poker game that I'd play in on Thursdays. Well, one day I'm at my buddy's house having a few beers and he's complaining about non-payment from a client. I ask who and he doesn't want to say. But it's really bugging him because it's a significant chunk of change. He then says the name, we'll call him Scott. I'm like, wow, Scott isn't paying you? He then says Scott is saying business is way down, and I think, that's odd. I've been going to one of Scott's places, and every Thursday it's packed. My buddy looks at me and goes, really? And I go, yeah, he does this new cash discount, I think. 15% off your tab if you pay cash. And my buddy goes, really? I tell him all about my experience at Scott's bar, and eventually the topic changes. A few weeks later, my buddy calls me up and says, are you going to Scott's bar to play poker? And I say, yeah. He says, can I join? I go, sure. He joins, we get a few drinks in, lose our money at poker. My house is closer, so he decides to crash there. On the way over there, he breaks down his theory. He thinks Scott is vastly underreporting his revenue, and the reason why he suspects Scott is offering a cash discount is because cash is easier to hide. He says he's going to do a deep dive on Scott's finances. My friend tells me his plan is to go to all 4 of Scott's business establishments, get the prices he charges at each place, piece together how much alcohol he's buying versus how much Scott is saying his revenue equates to. He looks up how much Scott is paying in payroll, rent, bills, which he has access to as his accountant. And he determines that Scott is basically using his credit card receipts and a little bit of cash to cover his cost of business to include rent, payroll, insurance, liquor, food. However, based upon the amount of products he's selling, he suspects Scott is underreporting his total income by about 35 to 40%. He goes back into Scott's books even more and figures in the last year Scott has been underreporting his sales by 35 to 40%, but he's also been underreporting his sales by about 20 to 25% for the years before now. Simply put, there's no way Scott is going through as much product and as much alcohol as he's purchasing and having the revenue numbers that he's claiming. He's underreporting his sales to his accountant, which means he's also underreporting his earnings to the IRS. By this point, Scott owes my friend thousands of dollars he hasn't paid. He said his total amount owed could buy a brand new motorcycle. He never gave me the exact number though. So my friend decides, screw getting repayment from Scott, let's get repayment from the IRS through the whistleblower program. He's estimating Scott's underreported his revenue by millions of dollars over the course of years. The whistleblower fees he'd earn from the IRS far outweigh the amount Scott owes him. The IRS will pay between 15 to 30% of what they collect. So with the assistance of a lawyer, my friend gathers all the evidence he has of Scott's underreporting to the IRS and files a whistleblower report with them. During this time, my friend fires Scott as a client for non-payment. Now, this part gets boring because there's a lot of legal wrangling and back and forth. This went on for a long time. However, eventually the IRS comes down on Scott and they come down hard. It's estimated that Scott underreported his income to the IRS to the tune of about $4.5 million. Now, my friend never told me how much the IRS was able to recoup, but Scott's businesses are no longer his businesses, and $4.5 million would put the whistleblower reward at about $675,000 to $1.3 million. Keep in mind it's based on what the IRS collects, not the amount that's reported. I've asked my friend how much he got in the end, and he simply said, I no longer have a mortgage, and it would have been much cheaper for Scott to just pay me. Was Scott the jerk? Fricking heck, I really wish I'd become a certified accountant now. Not only are they just generally really well compensated for what they do, you can also be a financial Batman and report crooks to the government for a massive payday yourself. Business owners, just pay your taxes, it's really not worth getting caught out on, or at the very least make sure that you're not directly aggravating the people who have the knowledge and capacity to ruin your life when you underpay them. It's a shame that only the mid-level jerks like this get caught. The higher-level ones have specialists in their pay to run roughshod around the IRS. But my opinions on taxes and the people who collect them aside, just pay the people you hire and do it on time, gosh darn it. It's just rude and bad business to do otherwise. I wonder whether the seizure of his businesses was considered punishment enough, or whether Scotty ended up going away for a lot longer for his blatantly illegal doings. It feels like if you deliberately defraud someone for that much, you're probably going to do serious time, right? For any number of reasons, Scott is definitely the jerk here. It would be interesting to know whether he was an all-round jerk who shortchanged everyone, or whether he looked after his own and his bar staff were getting the payout of a lifetime with all that cash. Am I the jerk for not stopping my workout for someone else to make a video? This is becoming more and more common at the surrounding gyms, which is really annoying and a reason I've changed gyms more than once this year alone. Working out is a pillar of my everyday life, and it has been for the past 10 years. And I'm at the gym every day of the week. Now, I don't go to the gym to talk to people, make friends, or make funny videos. I go to train and go home. However, now with the new video trends, many folks want to record their exercises to post on social media. This is their business and not mine, they can do whatever they want. But I also don't think I need to stop doing my own workout to accommodate them. Last night I was doing squats on the Smith machine. I work out with headphones and didn't notice someone trying to get my attention. I suddenly felt a tap on my shoulder mid-squat, and only then I noticed a woman with a very annoyed expression. She barely allowed me to finish the movement before starting talking, which was muffled due to my headphones. Long story short, she was annoyed because I was training in the Smith machine, as she wanted to record herself doing regular squats. However, she said the best spot was in front of that Smith machine — there's more than one machine by the way — and she didn't want me in the frame. So she wanted me to stop training just so she could record. Now, usually, if someone comes to me with a good attitude and asks if it's okay for me to stop for a series or two for them to record or even move machines, I probably wouldn't mind and comply. That woman did nothing of the sort, being extremely arrogant and honestly quite annoying. So I was petty and told her to record once I was done, and proceeded to do every single exercise I could on the same Smith machine. Squats? Smith. Hip thrusts? Smith. It was petty, and I know I shouldn't have done it, but I felt very vindicated seeing her annoyed expression. That being said, a few people have said I was a jerk for doing that, as there were other machines I could use. Honestly, they might be right, but hey, I thought I'd ask the internet. Was I too much of a jerk here? I don't think so. In fact, even with your disdain of the gymfluencers, you sound a bit more willing to move around and accommodate them than the narrator would be. I'm not going to remove all of my weight plates from wherever I am just so you can make your silly video. Also, never disturb someone mid-squat. You can at the very damn least wait until they're in between sets. Giving someone a fright when they have however many kilos balanced on them is just a recipe for disaster. At least it was at the Smith machine rather than a squat rack or, God forbid, at the bench press. This is like my personal nightmare. Even just a regular person asking if I'm done with my station spikes my irritation through the roof. But to go back to the gymfluencers, look, if you really need to make that kind of content, I'm not going to begrudge you, but everyone around you is paying the same gym membership as you and has equal rights to use the equipment without having to stay out of your camera angle. Most of the ones that pop up on my Instagram have people going hard in the background, so who cares? This lady is the jerk. Am I the jerk for asking my team member where she was when I noticed her away and offline statuses while she was working from home? My team at work does 4 days work from office and 1 day work from home. This is because we have sensitive physical paper files to work with as part of our work, so we still have to come into the office. One of my team members, Sarah, had appealed to do 2 days work from office and 3 days work from home instead, on the basis that she has 2 kids to look after. Although other team members also have kids and Sarah had no problem coming in 5 days a week before pandemic, I relented to the request after she became upset and accused me of being inflexible and started crying in my office. I also checked with the rest of my team to make sure they were okay with it. I've noticed of late that when Sarah is working from home, she has a tendency to go offline or away on Skype during office hours. She's usually offline or away more than an hour each time. Yesterday, I finally asked her about it and told her that other people, like internal clients and external stakeholders, have come to me for work matters she's handling because they couldn't locate her. One external stakeholder even told me Sarah was on leave, and when I clarified that she wasn't on leave, the stakeholder was bewildered. But she's been offline the whole morning. Sarah was defensive and sarcastically apologized for not being there to reply to the messages immediately. She then added that as long as she got her work done, it didn't matter when she was online or offline. I told her she didn't have to be online for the entire 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. duration, but minimally from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. with a break for lunch so that A, people can reach her if they need to, and B, other team members don't notice and start following her example, particularly since Sarah is senior to the others. Sarah was unhappy, and since then I've come to be aware she's been saying things about me to the rest of the team, including how I'm a dinosaur, still working according to former working norms. I should note that the entire division, including Sarah, reports to me. Sarah is salaried, not hourly. Sarah's work is affected by her behavior because part of her job is being available to internal clients and, where applicable, external stakeholders. External stakeholders can see whether Sarah is online or offline because we're all linked in a single public Skype network comprising related agencies, organizations, companies, and ministries. Separately, Sarah's conduct does affect me and the other team members since we have to respond to queries meant for Sarah, particularly where they're urgent. It also reflects badly on the division as a whole when Sarah is unreachable. So, am I the jerk? Look, I'm a big proponent for people working from home and being allowed to work according to their own schedule as long as they basically get their assignments done. But if you're being demonstrably less efficient than before, your workplace probably has just cause to ask these sorts of questions and make these demands. They have the paper trail here, in the form of your performance before and after the shift to working from home. And it sounds like clients are noticing the difference too and resulting in her colleagues being forced to make up the difference or track her down. Like I've said before, I think most workplaces opening up to working from home has been a silver lining of the pandemic. But to keep that perk, we really have to be able to show that we're not confirming certain paranoid bosses' fears, that we're just using the opportunity to play Xbox all day. People abusing the system means that the rest of us might get this great and flexible workplace perk taken away from us, and they should actually be called out on it. I know she has kids, but she's not being paid by work to look after them, and could at least improve her response time a little bit. There's nothing here to explain being gone for hours at a time. As a final aside tangent, this story was written in 2022. Who the frick was still using Skype in 2022? It's a broken, buggy mess that's been sending me repeat notifications about nothing for the past 2 years. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I a jerk for not telling a guy what I do for work and letting him pay for my drinks during the whole evening? My friend Grace invited me to a board game bar to play and have drinks with her, her boyfriend, and one of their friends, Nick. We went to get drinks in pairs, Grace going with her boyfriend. Meanwhile, Nick and I stayed at the table and vice versa. So Nick and I had plenty of time to talk, just the two of us. Nick started the night by telling me about his recent career change. He had decided to quit his previous job, go to a coding bootcamp, and get a job as a developer 1 or 2 months ago. He was very proud of himself and his new salary and told me this multiple times. He never asked me what I do for work, but talked about his new job quite a lot, occasionally saying, "Sorry you don't understand that." During the entire evening, I never told him I've been working as a software engineer for the past 4 years, because he never asked, and honestly, I found it a bit entertaining. When it came to the drinks, he offered to buy me every single one. Don't worry about it, it's not a problem with my developer salary. I told him multiple times he doesn't have to pay for me, but he insisted. At the end of the night, when we were saying our goodbyes, he took out his phone to send me a friend request on Facebook. My job is listed in my profile, so that was when he realized I'm a software engineer. He asked me if it's true that I'm a software engineer, and I answered yes. He asked me why I didn't tell him, and why did I let him believe I was a cashier like Grace used to be. I'd never implied this, by the way. He also asked why did I let him pay for everything when I probably earn more than him. I told him that he never once asked and that it was his fault he assumed. He could simply have asked me about my job, but he only wanted to brag about his. But if he wants to, I can pay him back for the drinks. He was angry and said I made a fool out of him. I think he did that, not me. But now Grace and her boyfriend are on his side too, saying that it would have cost me nothing to tell him early in the evening, and I only kept it for myself for my own entertainment. Well, I did find it entertaining, but I don't really feel like I did anything wrong. Am I the jerk? No, this isn't just a girl at a bar thing. I love letting these idiots run their mouth. It's a lot less cruel than verbal bullying because they do it all to themselves. Look, Nick, maybe you were just excited about your new career, and I'm happy for you. But you've got to be a more engaging conversationalist than just monologuing to random women in bars. Even if she wasn't an expert in your field, you probably would have looked a bit like a pompous jackass anyway. I'll admit that our author didn't exactly go out of our way to enlighten him, but she did offer to recompensate him for the drinks he'd paid for. And surely if the price really was nothing due to his impressive salary, he can't complain too much anyway? I think Nick should just walk away from this one and learn to engage and ask questions with the people he talks to. And Grace and her partner should just be able to laugh about this one. Am I the jerk for calling my hot-tempered guy co-worker emotional to embarrass him into calming the frick down? So, I'm an engineer, and I'm working on a team with 7 decently chill guys and 1 guy with anger issues. Like, he can't just have a respectful disagreement, he'll raise his voice and yell and get up and close to your face. I hate it. So I started by just complaining to my boss about it, and he brushed it under the rug, saying this is just how that guy is. And if I thought he was bad now, I should have seen him 10 years ago before he mellowed out. It makes me wonder what he was like 10 years ago, because he sure isn't mellow now. It's also a small enough company that there's no HR, only the corporate management. Which didn't help. So I took a different approach. I stopped calling him angry, or calling what he was doing arguing or yelling. I just swapped the words to emotional, or throwing a tantrum, or having a fit. I was kind of hoping I could shift his reputation from domineering, which has big man vibes, to emotional and tantruming, which has weak, sad baby vibes. So I just started making subtle comments. Like if I had a meeting with him and he got a temper, I'd mention it to the other people. Wow, it's crazy how emotional Jay got. I wonder how he has the energy to throw a hissy fit at 9 a.m. I'm barely awake. When my boss asked me to recap a meeting he missed, I told him, Dan, Jack, and James had some really great feedback on my report for this client. Jay kind of had trouble managing his emotions and had a temper tantrum again, but you know how he gets. Or when a coworker asked why he was yelling, I'd say, honestly, I don't even know. He's getting so emotional about it, he wasn't speaking rationally. I tried to drop it in subtly, and some of my coworkers started picking it up. I don't think they even did it consciously, just saying stuff like, oh, another one of Jay's fits, or something like that. I got gutsy enough to even start saying it to his face. Hey, I can hardly understand what you're trying to explain when you're so emotional. And again, my coworkers started picking up on it, and I even caught several of them telling him to get a hold of himself. After a while, he started to get a reputation as emotional and irrational, which I could tell made him even more angry. But he stopped yelling at me as much. Anyway, he slipped once this week, and I just said, I really can't talk to you when you're being this emotional. And he blew up at me, asking why I was always calling him that. I shrugged and said, dude, you look like you're on the verge of tears. Go look in the mirror before you ask me. And he got really angry that I suggested he might start crying. That was kind of a flippant comment. He was red-faced and angry and not tearful, and I could tell. I feel like a bit of a jerk for being petty and trying to gaslight the guy into thinking everyone around him sees him like a crybaby, but it also mostly worked when the proper channels at work didn't. Am I the jerk for calling my coworker emotional when he got mad? Well, you're not lying in a way. It does seem like this man is actually being very emotional. And it seems like it was a more effective way of making him get a handle on his behavior than going through the proper channels. I think a lot of whether you were a jerk would depend on whether this guy actually has an anger management problem, or whether he's just kind of a jerk who tries to get what he wants by intimidating people. And even if this is a temper problem, it's really something that one of his superiors should have called him out on sooner, if it's actually making people uncomfortable. So I'm not calling this as much of a jerk situation as one that was pretty poorly handled by any number of people. Also, a fun way of observing what happens to this kind of guy when you describe him the way that some people would use to describe a woman who behaved the same way. No swear words allowed on tombstones? Well, I'm a headstone designer. Years ago, a gentleman came into my shop looking to buy a grave marker for himself. He was in good health, just getting his affairs in order. Ordering a headstone pre-need is a good decision for a few reasons, including the fact that you can choose what goes on it. Our client wanted us to engrave something pretty crude. I can't remember the exact phrasing, but it included an F word and would definitely cause some backlash in my small town. The cemetery, not surprisingly, rejected our proposal. I'm willing to engrave whatever my client wants on a stone, but we're constrained by the graveyard's regulations. No inappropriate images or wording should appear on the memorial. Bummer. But we found a workaround. We engraved the scandalous epitaph on the bottom side of the stone. That way, nobody had to know what was under there, and my customer could read it and laugh for all eternity. Haha, I really want to know what the inscription was now, but I suppose that's between the man and, well, I guess nobody but himself for the rest of time, unless the cemetery gets cleared out or there's a particularly dedicated grave robber in the future. I bet that would be damn funny if it ever happened. Now I get to finish the video and think about what I want written on the bottom of my tombstone to mortify future ghouls with. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Or if you want to check out some great music, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything linked in the description.